What is up, guys? It's Doodoo Poker here, back for another video. Today we are going to be talking about the most common formation in poker. Button versus big blind, how to bluff catch versus triple barrels in single raise pots. So I have two hand histories. I have a bunch of MDA, and let's get into it. In the first hand, we have ace-3 of diamonds. We are in the big blind against a reg. The reg RFIs. We call with our ace-3 of diamonds. The flop comes, 8 of hearts, 7 of spades, 3 of spades. Now the first thing you want to note is their c-bet sizing. This is very important for future streets. We notice here they go around 50% pot, and we decide to call with our ace-3 of diamonds. Really nothing else to do. You could low frequency check raise, but we decide to call. Now the turn is a queen of clubs. Now, when he barrels turn, 75% pot, we have to think about rivers. First thing I want to look at is, let's look at turn double barrel frequencies. We notice when they bet bigger on the flop that they over barrel turn. So we want to understand that. But we also want to understand how to play rivers, because the river node is the most important node. Because if we know how to play rivers, we can be looser on the turn. Since a solver, if we see in the solver, mostly folds, you want to actually call more because we know how to play rivers. The river is the most important node in the spot. So what we're going to do is we're going to call slightly more on the turn, and then we're going to reevaluate on the river. So let's take a river. We call turn. Now the 9 of diamonds comes, and he bets 75%. Think about what you would do in this spot. We don't have 75% sizing exactly. Let's say it's 87. So a solver is always folding. But what would you do in this spot? You want to think, first of all, we have to go to data. Let's go to data for bet. This is the first and most important thing to understand. What you see in the data as the field as a single raise pot in position pre-flop raiser, button versus big blind, the red is under bluffed. The blue, the light blue is GTO, the light green is over bluffed with air, and the dark green is over bluffed with pairs. When they bet 50 on the flop and they bet a non-big sizing on the river, it is under bluffed. So you want to understand that this ace-3 is always a fold on the river, but you also have to look at board texture. This is the most important thing. Remember in MDA principle. What is the MDA principle? Texture supersedes sizing. Texture is always a more important data point than sizing. What do we know about this texture? What do we know about turn? We know in theory that the solver is omniscient. The solver sees everything and knows all possible runouts. So when we get to the turn, the solver is betting a hand like ace of spades 5x, no equity, ace of spades 4x, no equity. Why? Because he wants bluffs on spade rivers. The same thing happens on straight rivers. He's betting jack 6 clubs, jack 5 of hearts, no equity hands, jack 4, no equity, 10-5, no equity. Why? Because he wants to bluff on a 9 river. He wants to bluff on a 10 river with the jack 4. So what do we know about population? Population only finds bluffs in intuitive spots. The intuitive bluffs are hands like 10-9, jack 9, jack 8. Very obvious bluffs, right? Spades, 6-5 suited. Very obvious bluffs. These no equity hands are not obvious bluffs. So when the 9 comes on the river, all the obvious bluffs hit a pair or a straight. That means it's going to be under bluffed. It's under bluffed in texture, and it's going to be under bluffed in sizing. So two data points that make us want to fold. So we need to fold this ace-3 of diamonds. But we have to now switch to a different hand history to talk about the same formation, but a different run out. Okay, so in this hand, sorry about that, we have king 2 of spades. We are in the big blind. Now here, my opponent's a reg, he RFIs. Now we have a 10 high board, a 10 of hearts, a 3 of diamonds, and a 2 of clubs. Now my opponent still bets 50 on the flop. So we always want to make note of the c-bet sizing. It's very important for river decisions and if you're going to bluff catch or not. What do we see here? He bets about 50% and we call with our third pair. Now the turn comes a 9 of spades. And now my opponent overbets. But we want to look at texture. Remember, texture supersedes sizing. MDA principle. So do you think there are a lot of intuitive barrels here? I think so. I mean, king, queen, jack, king, jack, any ace 4, ace 5, 6, 5. You get the idea, right? There's a lot of very intuitive hands that want to barrel. So when he overbets turn, he went 150, but let's just say 125. We have our king 2, and a solver would mostly fold. In fact, it says it's a losing call, so it's always folding this. It says it's a small mistake. We should not be folding here because we know how to play rivers. So because we know how to play rivers, we get to call more on the turn. That makes sense, right? If I know how to play rivers, I get to be a little looser on the turn. So you should always call turn in this spot. So we call turn. Now the river is a 7 of clubs. Okay. So here, my opponent does something a bit unorthodox. The effective stack is a little over 2x pot, and he jams all in. He jams all in. Should we call with our fifth pair? We have fifth pair. We basically have nothing, but we have a bluff catcher. Well, remember how I said you want to play turns looser because we understand river nodes. Let's go back to the data. I made a folder for us too. What does 2x pot say on the river after bet 50? Well, we don't have that sizing. Uh-oh, now what do we do? Okay, well, we planned for this, so we have to go into hand-to-note data. Let's go to bet 50, bet, and look at 2x pot or higher sizings. What do you notice here? You notice that the huge sizings are going to be either GTO-ish or over bluffed. What should this number be? What should bet 120 be? Well, bet 120 is going to be 120 divided by 340 because 120 plus 120 plus 100. That should be 35, so it's 36, so very close. Now, what should 150 be? Well, it's between 130 and 170. That should be around, let's see what it says, 150. Should be 150 plus 100. Should be 37. So this is very close to GTO. But what do you notice at the high end? At 280. 280 should be 280 plus 280 plus 100, which is 660. 42, it's 51. So at the high end, they're over bluffing, but at the low end, they're under bluffing. This is counterintuitive. When they go huge, like all in, they're over bluffing. When they go small, like bet 30, bet 50, bet 70, they're under bluffing. So you call versus the jam, but you fold versus the bet 70 or less. So when we understand that the jam is weaker than the bet 70, we realize we can play turns looser because, why? We understand river nodes. This is very important. So what you notice here, this is the bet 50 bet. So let's say, oh, well, maybe bet 30 is different. Well, let's compare bet 30 to bet 50. I'll go to bet 30 and let's compare the two. What we see here is, oops, sorry guys. We see bet 50, bet 29 week, 280, 51. Let's compare this. Bet 30, bet 35. So it's a weaker range, but when they jam, it's actually a stronger range, but still over bluffed. Isn't that interesting? Because the bet 50, bet is it's a stronger range in the lower sizings, but it's a weaker range in the higher sizings. So when he jams, he's 51 week. When he jams, he's 44 week. But they're still both over bluff. So you always want to call your bluff catchers versus the bet, jam line. Now let's try bet 70. We're not even done yet. Let's go to bet 70. Bet 70 here. What do you see? Same trend. Same trend. All in. Huge sample sizes. Huge sample sizes. 280, 46 weeks, should be 42. So in every C-bet sizing between bet 30, bet 50, and bet 70, when they jam river, overbluffed. But if they bet small, underbluffed. So let's do a recap on this. This is a lot to take in. This is a very nuanced topic. You have to look at the texture. You have to look at the sizing. You have to know if the sizing is overbluffed, and you have to know if the texture is over or underbluffed. So this is actually not correct. Hold on. Call mix continues. Call mix continues in the button versus big blind. So we call mix continues in the button versus big blind formation because we know how to play rivers. Okay. So if our opponent c-bets 50% or c-bets 70% on the flop, the triple barrel line is underbluffed in non-overbet sizings. We have to remember this. It's underbluffed if they bet 50 or 70 and they go non-overbet, but it's overbluffed if they do an overbet. Okay, so here is your cheat sheet for bluff catching in the button versus big blind when you're in the big blind. Number one, look at flop texture. Is it a good or bad flop texture to bluff catch? In the first hand, bad texture because there's no natural bluffs. All the natural bluffs got there on the river. So bad texture, we fold. Second hand, good texture, we call. A lot of natural bluffs. King jack, queen jack, king queen, ace 4, ace 5. All very natural bluffs, we call. So that's the first thing to note. Let's go back. Second thing, you want to think about the board. Good boards, low boards, boards that have a lot of natural bluffs. Bad boards, ace-high boards, monotone boards. Those are all under bluff boards. Number two, look at c-bet sizing. Does he go small, medium, or large? This is going to matter for river decisions. And then finally, you look at the river sizing. We know the smaller bets are actually underbluffed, but the overbets are always overbluffed. So you call your bluff catchers versus the overbet jam, but you fold your bluff catchers versus the bet 30, bet 50, bet 70. Okay, so this is a lot to take in. Go through it a couple times. I know it's a lot of nuance, but that's what poker is. It's all specific. It's all very specific information. You have to talk about flop texture. You have to think about sizing, and you have to think about, are there a lot of natural bluffs in your opponent's range? If you enjoy this type of content, please give me a like. Please give me a subscribe. New video every single day, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.